Welcome to Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast, your go-to source for insights and inspiration as you navigate your optometry journey.
Whether you're a student or a recent graduate in your first few years of practice, we're here to explore the topics that matter: career paths, job opportunities, board preparation, and more.
Each month, we'll bring you expert guests and practical tips to help you thrive in the world of optometry.
And just before we begin, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, OSI Group. If you're thinking about building an independent practice, it's easy to see it as a solo journey, so a singular vision shaped by your own hard work and determination. But here's the thing, true independence is often best achieved in a community.
OSI Group empowers independent optometrists through community, education, and the resources they need to thrive. As a member, you get all the advantages of a large network while staying firmly in control of your future. Visit www.opto.com for more. So, let's shape the future of optometry together on Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast.
And we're excited to start our first episode of the year, 2025, with Dr. Sandra Chiu. Welcome, Sandra, to the podcast. We're really excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you.
We'll just let our listeners know that Sandra is originally from Toronto. She completed her Bachelor of Medical Science at Western and graduated from NECO in 2014 as valedictorian. That's a really great achievement.
Very big.
Yeah, it's huge. And after graduating, Dr. Chiu returned to Toronto and worked as an associate at various offices around the GTA. In March of 2021, she purchased Carey Optical and moved with her husband and her dogs to Port Elgin. And that's in Ontario. I just learned that. And Carey Optical has since rebranded as Lakeview's Eye Care, and it operates as a full scope private practice. So welcome again, Dr. Chiu, and we're really looking forward to hearing your journey about how you transitioned from associate to practice owner.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to be back and hear from you. And we're really looking forward to this conversation. I think there's going to be a lot of good insight for both new grads and students who are figuring out what they're doing next.
Yeah, for sure. I'm really happy to share my experiences and hopefully a little wisdom I've collected along the way. So thanks for having me.
For sure.
I'm sure there will be tons of wisdom. Tons.
Yeah. So I think let's start by asking you kind of, how did your journey start of practicing after you graduated? What kind of setting were you in? How long were you in that setting for? And yeah, just start there.
Okay. So, I graduated in 2014 and I knew that I wanted to move back to Toronto and live downtown. And so pretty much what I was looking for was somehow a practice to somewhere commutable downtown. And I wanted to fill my days because I was stressed about finances and student loans. Initially, I started so it was a corporate side-by-side, but the owners, actually after I interviewed at one of their downtown locations, it turned out they had 3 practices that they were looking to fill days at. They're all corporate side-by-sides. 2 were downtown and 1 was in Mississauga. And they said, look, if you want to fill your schedule, we could break it up across all our practices, focusing you mainly downtown because that's where you want to be. And that could be it. And I thought, great. That takes care of everything I was looking for.
Easy.
Yeah, easy choice. So I did that for a year. And honestly, so it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as busy as I thought it was going to be. And I felt like it was going to take too long to build up a full schedule of patients every day amongst these 3 practices. And I really didn't love driving all the way to Mississauga from downtown, even though it was maybe 1 or 2 times a week. So after that year, I decided to leave those practices. And there was an opportunity at another corporate side-by-side, but this one was 45 minutes uptown from downtown Toronto. But this one was different because it was a more established practice. There were, it'd been open for, say, 20, 25 years at that time, 2 lanes, maybe 3 to 5 associates at any given time, like in the practice, but, 2 lanes running at a time. And so that one was much busier. And I was able to build up more days and spent probably most of my time in Toronto there. So 5.5 years at that practice, kind of starting at 2 days a week, but I eventually was there probably 4.5 days. And that was long enough hours to really be like a full schedule. So I did a lot of corporate optometry in my time in Toronto. And then I changed to private practice after that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like your journey sounds extremely similar to ours. And it's probably similar to more than 50% of new grad optometrists out there, right? The first thing that we do when we come out of school, it seems like when it comes to like part-time positions, one day here, one day there, you can travel between offices. Corporate settings really do have a lot of those opening positions, right? For students that are just graduating and coming out. So I'm more curious to know then what motivated you eventually to leave that corporate setting and transition into more of a private practice setting long term?
So, what was nice about corporate optometry initially was I didn't have to like invest any of my own money or resources into it. So everything is kind of just taken care of and you just show up, you see your patients, and there's not a lot of admin or anything outside of your time seeing patients. But that started to feel very impersonal, and every day felt like I was very much having the same day over and over again. And I felt understimulated. And so I started to think, this was right around the time that I've been feeling understimulated for a while. And I also increasingly over time in corporate optometry, it went from not having a lot to do with the other side of things, like the dispensing side of things, to feeling like, pressured to walk my patients over and, physically hand over their prescription to a sales associate or to have certain numbers and metrics tracked. So it didn't feel as independent as it should be. And so all those feelings combined, I started to think, what else can I do? And then COVID happened and I had a lot more time to reevaluate everything in my life, like where I was living, how much I was making, how much longer could I hypothetically work as an associate in corporate optometry for. And at that point, I was really open to anything. Like I thought maybe I'll use my bachelor and background in science in some other way. Or should I work for a pharmaceutical company? Or should I purchase a private practice? I was really open to all those things. And I found in my search of what to do next, I found a practice management kind of company where they can help support you if you are looking at vetting and valuation of a business or the acquisition process of buying a practice. And in speaking with them, I kind of came to realize that I wanted to pursue private practice and look for a practice outside the GTA to purchase. And that's really how I made that transition.
I think it's so interesting to hear your journey because you went from exclusively working in a corporate setting to then going and purchasing a private practice without really having much experience in private practice as an associate. So, you really just lunged
Jumped
right in. Yeah. It was really brave of you, I think. And was it like a certain point where you felt like you hit rock bottom where you were like, I can't even look at corporate optometry the same?
Yes. Yes. And I think that was accelerated by the pandemic, like by having everything shut down and also at that time, even after the first little bit where everything was shut down and then, optometry practices opened up and we could see our patients again. I could not fathom doing that, like going to work and coming home and having nothing else open and doing it in that context. And I thought, if I'm going to just go home and go to work and go home and go to work, and that's all I can do, then I could do that anywhere. And it doesn't have to be in Toronto. It doesn't have to be in this practice context. And that really opened up like possibilities for me. It was more the mental of it.
I find that COVID really changed a lot of people's mindsets too, especially people who lived in bigger cities, right? There was a huge shift, even in the US and in Canada, for a lot of people to move to more rural or small towns because they wanted that also like that more slowed down life, that connection to nature, being able to, have access to the outdoors and just, having a change in scenery and a change in your environment. So I'm not surprised that you did that though, because I feel like a lot of people, once we were able to slow down during the shutdown, I think some people just realized how much they love to still work, but to be able to slow down when they go home. And living in a big city, you can't slow down. There's so many cool things to do in a city, and you're always walking around trying different things. So I totally feel you. I still live in a big suburb area, but ever since the pandemic shut down, I've been on real estate websites just staring at homes for sale in small towns.
Girl, you just opened a private practice. What are
I
you
know. Yeah,
doing?
no, I have no money to move. I'm just watching. I'm just looking. I'm looking at those houses going, wow, it's so quiet there. Such a big yard.
Oh my
So many
God.
dogs.
It's not a bad life.
It's not a bad life. No.
No, I think it's interesting to think of like completely just like uprooting and relocating. And I live in Toronto. I have planted some roots here, so it would be a little bit more difficult for me to do. But I think you've kind of touched on what influenced you to move. But like, have you felt any kind of moments of isolation from friends, from family? How does your kind of personal life in your new location?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There are times where, I really miss being closer to friends, but it actually took a while to feel that way because when I moved, it was deep in COVID. We were kind of going in and out of shutdowns for months at a time. And so lifestyle wise, that really didn't change. It wasn't such a stark change from like being able to see your friends every weekend or whatever it is, however often you can see your friends. I didn't feel that until maybe a couple years in, really, because everything was back to normal. And then, there's more events and then there's more things you miss out on. But I also made a point of visiting Toronto a lot. And I still do. Like I come back ideally 2 to 4 weeks for a weekend visit. I'm really lucky to have one of my best friends. She's like a sister. And so to stay at her place doesn't feel like you're a guest somewhere. It just feels like you're, hanging out. It's not a big deal. And she comes up to visit me often. So I'm lucky to have that. And when you're away, and you guys might have felt this way when you were a student too, like all move away mostly for school. And then you come back over holidays and you almost see your friends more often because people go out of their way to like, oh, okay, you're in town this weekend, so let's make plans. And you end up doing more and seeing your friends more regularly that way than if you just lived in the city because things get busy anyway.
I find that that's also like, then you have things to look forward to. So I've had those conversations with my husband before, if we were to ever, we have a lot of roots where we live. And so it's like, if we were to ever move, the first question he says is, well, what about seeing our siblings, our parents, our friends? And I'm like, we all live so close right now and we only see our friends, once every couple of weeks, once a month or 2 months because everyone is busy. And so you have to plan ahead anyways. And so it's like, if you live far, you just plan for, what are we all doing in a month? What are we all doing in 6 weeks? Let's book a day, 2 days where we all hang out. And then it's like, you can look forward to that too, while you're working and enjoying your life somewhere else. It's something to like get excited about because it almost feels like you're going on like a road trip or like you're getting like a mini vacation away from home. So hopefully it doesn't feel that bad if anyone else is thinking about doing it.
Yeah, it's not that bad. And also outside of those trips that you're planning and looking forward to, like you also, if you put the energy into meeting new people and like growing your network in your new community, you will make friends. It takes time. It definitely takes a lot of time and the friendships will not be as deep and as close initially as the ones that you have where you have your roots. But like you will meet people eventually and you will make friends. And if you put yourself out there, which you kind of have to do, like in my case, as a practice owner, like you kind of do have to put yourself out there and network and get involved in the community. So if you're doing that anyway, you meet people.
Do you dream of forging your own path in optometry? OSI Group empowers optometrists to build thriving, independent practices. Your vision, your way.
Business coaching and support, practice management software, digital solutions, and advantageous volume discounts. OSI Group is 100% member owned and proudly Canadian.
Standing out doesn't mean standing alone. Join a dynamic community fueling your success at every stage of your journey. Take the first step today at www.opto.com. That's OPTO.com.
So, Sandra, let's kind of transition. So, you purchased an existing practice that was established for many years. What made you choose that route instead of starting your own private practice from scratch? Were you thinking about that option too?
The thought in theory crossed my mind, but in reality was like not really an option because of like financial obligations. So when you start a practice, I'm sure you know, it's not necessarily profitable right away. And, you know, you're really building your patient base and everything. You've got expenses of starting that business. And I needed whatever my next step was going to be. I needed to be profitable because I was the main like breadwinner of the family. So by purchasing an existing practice that was already profitable, I knew I would be able to pay myself probably based on, you know, projections, a certain amount. And that was going to be enough to live off of and cover all my dogs. So that was the main, the main thing was I knew I had to, whatever I did would have to be profitable right away.
Okay. Was that advice given to you by the company that you used or the consultants that you used to, you know, kind of get a quote on a practice to purchase?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. And so, you know, because you used to work in a full corporate setting, and now that you're in a private practice setting that has a lot of other factors to it, like admin work, optical exposure, all these sorts of things, and being a boss, being an employer, out of like all of those things, what has been the most challenging like transition from working in that corporate world to now being an independent practice owner?
I think initially I had truly zero knowledge of the dispensing side of things. Like I thought I knew, but I didn't know. I didn't know
Me neither.
anything.
Me
I didn't
neither.
know what different lenses were out there, what different lens designs mean, like how to troubleshoot stuff like that, the different companies, like truly, truly zero. And so that was a really steep learning curve initially. And then I guess ongoing, I don't mind it. I actually really enjoy like the people being like a manager or boss or like that stuff. But, you know, there's a lot of, especially for admin type jobs in optometry, there's a lot of turnover. So that's kind of tricky to stay on top of over time. Like you know, you train someone up and you really love having them at your office and they're a great part of the team. But, you know, life happens and they need to move or whatever the case may be. And so having to hire and train again is hard.
Yeah, that's tough. And I do find like, I totally agree with you. I think any student who's listening right now would be like, yeah, owning a practice and being in charge is not on my to-do list right now. Like, I'm just trying to learn how to hold a gonio lens without dropping it. But it's so true. Even when I opened my practice with Dr. Farvaha, I mean, the nice thing is I opened with a partner. So I, you know, didn't feel that burden of having to learn everything by myself. But it's also his time owning a practice for the first time. So both of us were learning from scratch. And yeah, learning everything about dispensing, the optical, the lenses, frame adjustments. I mean, there's only so many notes in your like school notes that you can look back to. You know, it still feels really daunting. So that's where, you know, I do feel like a buying group really helps because they have those resources. Like they have training videos, they can come into the office. And like, so that's what we did with the buying group that we had. We, had them come in and train us how to work the optical. And Alexa's practice is also with OSI, right? Bayview Vision. So again, it's like they have all the resources to kind of help. And honestly, that for me just made me feel like, okay, I can learn these things one day at a time. I don't have to know everything right now. When the practice is open, I'll learn as I go. And so did that help you too? Like were you with your buying group right away, or did you kind of get a buying group afterwards?
Yeah. No, I was with OSI right off the bat, and that was a huge help. And so yeah, relying on your OSI rep, and they have so many resources, so many resources. And then even your like lens, any kind of rep is because they want you to, they want you to be knowledgeable about their product, and so they're happy to train you. And then when it is your own practice, you learn fast. You learn really fast because the stakes are high. But it's definitely doable, very doable. You're not alone. And I remember thinking, like when I first took over, so part of the agreement when I took over from the previous owners, who were a husband and wife optician team, they were nice enough to agree to stay with me for 2 months.
That's great.
To help change over. So they taught me a lot about, how to run an optical and things like that. And I remember thinking, like, what do I do when they're not here for me to ask? What do I do about this? But then I realized, like, oh, you just have to ask for help. Like you ask your Hoya rep, or you ask your OSI rep, all you have to do is ask the question, and you will eventually get to an answer. So that even if you've never encountered whatever the situation is yet, because it didn't come up in the 2 months that I had the previous owners, or whatever the case may be, like you just reach out until you find the answer.
I think it was nice that you had that transition, but I think you're so right. Like truly the only way to learn is to be thrown into something. So like had they stuck around a little longer, it would have probably just prolonged you from learning the things you needed to know yourself.
Absolutely.
It sounds like you've built like an incredible practice, and you're still growing it. Do you have any future goals for your practice, or any future kind of personal growth goals or career goals as an optometrist?
Well, so right now I am towards the second half end of a renovation. So I am moving my practice. I haven't really announced this like on socials yet, but we'll talk about it here.
Wow.
Oh my gosh, it's an exclusive announcement, guys.
Yeah. Stay tuned.
So I'm going to within the same town, but I found I didn't do any like renovations really or updating to the existing space since I took over. But I did find a new space that I completely like gutted and renoed and modernized. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to have room for 2 exam lanes instead of 1.
So nice.
So I'm moving the practice to that soon. And then my current location is going to have a little rebrand. So it's going to be 2 businesses to...
Oh, that's great.
Wow. Oh my gosh. We were not expecting that.
You're really expanding.
And you're scaring off our audience right now. Don't talk about this. Kidding. I feel like everyone listening, all the students right now are just going to be freaking out like, oh my gosh, how are you handling 2? Like it was so much to even handle 1.
It's a lot, but so the way I thought about it is just based on the economics of the town that I'm in, it's growing, which is great. That's what you want to look for, is ideally a growing community that is somewhat underserved in optometry. Like that's what you want to look for, right? But that also means that leaves an opening for, like, we don't have like really a corporate optometry presence or corporate optical presence. So before they move in, I was kind of thinking maybe I should be that rather than...
That is really smart.
Like not a corporate, like a private presence, but that was the motivation. It's like either I leave space for them to move in or I can expand.
Wow. Yeah, that's really great thinking.
Do you have an associate right now, or are you looking?
No,
Not that I'm looking
though,
to move.
So, you guys, anyone wants to reach out?
There you go. You might have a future OD here that finds you.
I'm in a point where I really enjoy like mentorship. I feel like I have, 10 years of experience and a lot to share. And I really like being involved in stuff like this. And I'm on the NECO alumni board and I try to mentor students whenever possible. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, that's awesome. And we have one last question for you, Sandra. We don't want to hold you back from your soon to be dinner. Reflecting on your journey, going from corporate to owning a private practice and now revamping it, what advice would you give to the new graduates who are coming out of school, learning how to manage their student loans and their debt and seeking job security while they're deciding on their career path? What would your advice be to them just based on what you've been through?
Okay, let's talk about student loans for a second, because that's probably like one of the scariest things. Instead of looking at your student loan as whatever like X huge dollar amount it is, you can talk to your bank or what and calculate, okay, what is this huge dollar amount? What does that actually mean for a monthly payment? And they can talk to you about like different amounts or whatever it is, and then treat that like a car payment or your cell phone bill or something like that. It's just another payment that you have to make every month. And don't worry about the big number, just worry about hitting that monthly payment number and then add that to your phone bill, your groceries, whatever it is. And then you'll have, okay, how much do I need to make a month to live wherever I want to live and do the things that I want to do and do some fun things too. And then when you have that number, you can take that number with you to a job interview and, be really candid with whoever you're interviewing with and say, could I work with you? And could we hit, like, this is what I need to make to pay my bills. Like, how are you going to help me achieve that? So that way, whatever your choice is, whether it's a corporate optometry job or a private, whatever it is, at least you're coming into it less scared of the numbers part of it and really asking the right questions, or like, are you working in optometry the way you want to? How many weekends and evenings do you have to give up? Who are you going to be working for? How are they going to support you, mentor you, market you? Do they want you to take over one day? How often can you have that conversation with them? Maybe not right away. Maybe you need to, get to know each other if this is the right fit. But how often can you bring it up and things like that? So that's the kind of advice I would give.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I think when you go into an interview, sometimes you blank and you don't really have questions for whoever you're interviewing with, and you're just trying to get a job. But I think it's nice to know like you have your needs too, and don't just take a job because it's there, but actually take a job because they can support you and they can help you achieve what you want to achieve. So yeah, very valuable points there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like the perfect ending actually to what you started the conversation with. I feel like this is coming full circle because you mentioned that when you started at that one side-by-side corporate practice and you were going to their multiple locations, you felt like after, a year or a couple months that your schedule just wasn't increasing. And so you decided to look elsewhere. This is a really good reminder for students coming out of school, new grads coming out, having those open conversations with the employers or with the OD that you're working with to say, my schedule is not full. This is what I'm expecting, or this is what I need based on, what my living expenses are and XYZ. What can we do together to fill that schedule? And if there's no answer on the other end, if they're not willing to provide any solutions, then that's when you know that it might not be the best place for you to be. And you want to look somewhere else where you can make sure that person is willing to work with you to get you to where you need to be. So I kind of love that.
Mic drop.
Yeah, I would agree. I would also just say one more thing. I would say keep an open mind, especially about rural optometry. Like the city is great, but also keep an open mind about opportunities a little further away from where you think you want to live.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell it to my husband. I want to move to a rural area and he does not. He wants to be very close to Chick-fil-A. So we're not allowed to go anywhere else. It's really sad.
I'm sure there's some Chick-fil-A locations in the States that are very rural. So
yeah, but then, that's moving much farther than where I am.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a journey.
Well, thank you so much, Sandra, for sharing your journey. Honestly, I feel like all of our paths are very, very similar. And so, like I said in the beginning, this is going to resonate with a lot of people listening. And I hope that, your journey gives some people motivation and inspiration to go for what's going to be the best for their career. Do you mind just sharing some contact information if anyone's listening and they want to reach out to you, visit your practice, get some mentorship from you? Where can they find you?
So the practice Instagram is Lake Views with an S, Eye Care. You could also email me at info@drsandrachiu.com. So it's drsandrachiu.com. And I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions, or if you are looking for a mentor or just want to know more about anything we talked about, I'm happy to answer an email.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. We had a great time chatting. And honestly, you did a great job on this podcast. So thank you again for taking the time out and chatting with us about it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast.
You can find us on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For episode summaries and more resources, visit us at eyecarebusiness.ca.
Be sure to follow Next Gen OD on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for updates, news, and more insights into the world of optometry.
And this episode was brought to you by OSI Group, where connections, coaching, and collective buying power support your independent vision. Visit www.opto.com for more.
Don't forget to check out the show notes at eyecarebusiness.ca. Until next time, stay focused on your future.